It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back, your feel-good breakfast show, live, large and in charge on this Monday morning, and a very special one it is for our darling Dr. Eve. And may I say it already that it is...
Yes.
Happy birthday! And look at the lovely spread on the table.
I know. So, the Velvet Cake Company, which is like the cake company in Cape Town, they have sponsored cakes for Expresso.
Oh, hey!
All of them are keepers, but this one is
the rainbow
especially-
cake, the sprinkle cake, the bunny cake, the Easter cake. So thank you to Velvet Cake Company.
All right, but of course now it is that time of the morning on a Monday morning when we talk relationship stuff, and we're talking a very, very, very serious topic this morning because we know that a couple, you know, of course, consists of two people, the relationship, sharing all of life's moments together, the worst, the best of it too. And so when one partner goes through a very traumatic experience, it is something that, you know, really needs for the other partner to also be there and be present.
Yeah, you experienced it both. So, of course, our lines are open. Give us a call, 083-913-3728. Dr. Eve is with us in the house to answer any questions you might have. But, Dr. Eve, let's talk about the different traumas.
Yeah.
I mean, there's emotional, there's your physical, long-term, short-term. How can that affect different partners?
This is such an interesting topic for me because this is an area that I've been training in for the last 2 years when I realized that a lot of people's what's called out-of-control behavior, and we'll talk about what that is as a result of early childhood traumas. So we have two different kinds of traumas. We have a trauma that happens to all of us every day in the moment, and it could be a fabulous thing like moving to a new house or having a baby.
Oh, so that's also called trauma?
Yeah,
okay.
Because your responses, your physiological, emotional responses, would that be of like trauma? Your body goes into a state of trauma and crisis, and then eventually you settle down. So it could be something like an illness or an accident or the loss of somebody beloved, but then it is in the moment and you pass over and you become into a normalized state again. There's also trauma which happens to people, which is called post-traumatic stress disorder, if you've had a motor car accident or if you've been in a war, and then there are the consequences to that where the body goes into enormous shock around that. But then the kind of work that I'm mostly interested in is something called developmental trauma disorder, and this is for people who as children had any kind of trauma, which means any abuse, neglect, physical, emotional, or sexual abuse. And you know that we live in a country where, unfortunately, we have an enormous amount of childhood trauma. So what we found that as a result of that trauma, when they become adults, they struggle to actually control their behavior, which means that they become very angry, very aggressive, drink, smoke, take drugs, use sexuality a lot to soothe their pain. But it affects the intimacy, and that's what I'm most interested in, working with people who have had childhood trauma and then come into my therapy room and say, actually, I'm not able to be intimate with a partner, there's a breakdown. So we're talking to our viewers today about the traumas that they've experienced, not only as children, we don't expect you to disclose those things, but how you struggle now in the moment to have an intimate relationship with somebody, where you might find that you're incredibly anxious in your attachment to somebody, or you're incredibly avoidant, and you really can't feel close. You know those people who say, I've got commitment phobia, I don't really know how to attach, or people who really just say that, you know, I just want to be in this relationship all the time. And we also want to hear from people who have experienced traumas, which impact on the ability to reconnect with a partner or to actually get back into a relationship again.
And that's where we'd like you to be part of the conversation. And give us a call on 083-913-3728. We'll take your calls live, your questions live, and Dr. Eve will be here to answer them. And when we come back in our next segment, we just want to find out about the different ways in which a recent trauma versus a long-term trauma can affect somebody, or trauma that occurred a long time ago. So we're going to keep Dr. Eve here. So please do give us those calls. We'll continue our relationship chat very shortly.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Absolutely, and we've also opened up our lines for you to call us and give us your questions or your comments regarding whether your relationship has gone through trauma, have you gone through trauma while being in a relationship, and how that all worked out. So give us a call on 083-913-3728 with Dr. Eve standing by.
That's right. Well, before we get back to Dr. Eve, we want to hear from our Expresso couples if they've had experienced trauma in the past that might have changed their relationships.
Have you gone through a trauma in the past that changed your relationship?
Not one that I can think of, especially like
obviously referencing this relationship, I haven't gone through a life-changing trauma.
Yeah, me neither.
Recently.
They've all just been like summer flings and fun. They haven't been like hectic.
Yeah.
Well, in the early stages of us dating, I was mugged with a friend. I would definitely say it was a nice surprise. It's almost like you got a really early test within a few, but I think we were only dating for a month when that happened. Yeah. And I mean, he was right there the whole way through, especially because it brought up some other stuff for me, and it was really important to have him there, and he was just completely on board, even when for a few months after. It took me quite a long time to get over it. It was quite amazing, actually, to have had that such solid, incredible support from the beginning, which could have kind of, I don't know, scared someone off maybe. And Miles was just right there, so it wasn't an on-purpose test, but it ended up being a test in a way, which he passed.
Thank you very much to our Expresso couples for sharing their thoughts with us. And as I said, our lines are open. Please do give us a call. Now, Dr. E, before we end off the last segment, I want to know whether the time in which the trauma occurs makes a difference in the way it affects the person. So a trauma that has occurred very recently versus one that occurred a long time ago. Yeah, it does. The different symptoms and different signs. I want to also just say so that people can understand, because people don't know this, Kat, or don't kind of label it such, but a divorce and infidelity are traumas as well. And this is something, unfortunately, most of us do experience at some point in our lives or another, or, as you heard from one of our couples, a rape or a sexually violent incident or any kind of physical harm. Those things affect you. So if in the short term, if you have something like that, that would fall under the PTSD, the post-traumatic stress disorder, and that's when your body goes into this physiological shock where you really find that you're not able to sleep, you become depressed, you become afraid, you may even become antisocial, you begin to isolate yourself, you spend a lot of time crying, your mood becomes incredibly depressed, you just find that your whole physiological, your body just carries that trauma, and it absolutely goes into a state of collapse or sometimes freeze, as we call it. The difference is if somebody who's had an early childhood trauma is that the brain becomes rewired. And so you respond to your world in a very different way from a very high state of anxiety. And those are people who have what's called out-of-control behavior or dysregulated emotions. So those are people who would come into my therapy room, or some of our viewers experience this, I'm sure, who feel a lot of anxiety a lot of the time, or a lot of aggression, a lot of anger. And also they get a lot of physiological symptoms. So those are people who have problems, what we call with the rest and digest part of their bodies. So they find that they have problems with their throats, often get throat infections. They also have digestive difficulties. They also might find that they've got IBS, they've got really all the frontal systems really are not functioning very well because they're in such elevated state of anxiety a lot. So people who've got a lot of anger, those are people who I would really look at and say, I wonder if there's childhood trauma that has happened to them. And then they're obviously not able to relate intimately because they're so busy trying to keep alive in the world. They feel as if their lives are threatened, that it's very hard to connect with somebody else.
Okay, well, Dr. Eve, we do have a caller on the line. Anonymous, good morning.
Yes, good morning to you. How are you all?
We are very well, thank you. What's your comment or question for Dr. Eve?
Okay, my question is, very briefly, my sister and her partner of 14 years with their 3 children, 18, 17, 13, had a head-on collision in 1993, and my sister was very badly broken, with broken bones, etc., etc., and since then, I remember the doctor saying to me as her sister, your sister will be very angry and she'll take it out on the people closest to her. To cut a long story short, we're now in 2017. Very angry she is with me, to the extent that it's been a year and a half that we haven't spoken to one another. How do I cope?
You struggling to manage the situation, I'm quite sure, around that. So I will really get you to go into therapy. And we have wonderful interventions today to work with trauma. You know, the old days of just saying you have to go for therapy, they don't work, because what happens is somebody like you who are feeling the traumatic impact of what has happened to your sister, you are in a state of elevation and you feel desperately upset all the time. So some of the lovely interventions that we're doing is like, I would suggest you go for yoga, because what you want to do is to get your anxiety still. So you want to get your mind to be still so that you're not worrying. You wake up and you think about your sister and the anger. You want to not have so much anger. So things like going for yoga frequently is a wonderful intervention to help you to keep calm. Practicing what's called mindfulness is a wonderful thing to do as well. Dancing, singing in choirs, they're lovely things to do for people who are struggling hugely with trauma, which are not just talk therapy. That's necessary as well, but you have to have all the other interventions. So go start practicing mindfulness, where you can be quiet and don't feel so anxious and upset around what's going on with your relationship with her. I mean, your sister needs to be doing this stuff as well, of course.
Anonymous, thank you so much for the call, and thank you for sharing that with us. And we're going to take a quick break from the segment. When you come back, I just want to tap further into what Anonymous just shared with us right now, and to try and understand, like she said, that her sister is angry with her. So maybe for you to explain, Dr. Eve, what is happening to that person that they might be angry with me when perhaps I had nothing to do with that trauma that they suffered. If we can maybe tap back into that. So stay tuned. Great. We will be right back.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Very warm welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast show. We're with Dr. Eve, our relationship expert. We're talking about how to handle trauma within a relationship. Now, we spoke earlier on with Anonymous, who said that many years ago, her sister was in a car accident with the family. We don't know any further details, but I was trying to understand what could possibly be going on in the person's mind who might be the one who experienced the trauma and is now angry and perhaps lashing out at those that are closest to them and, in fact, trying to offer support.
It's such a common thing that happens. This case is kind of difficult. As you said, Kat, we don't really know what happened because it's almost inappropriate that she would carry the trauma from 1993 to now. So either she was triggering off a childhood trauma that happened to her, or else there has been such a bigger trauma. You know, like Zoe was saying earlier, maybe she has lost her children. We don't know what it really was, but it would be inappropriate if it was just a car accident, unless she was disabled as well, mentally or physically disabled. We don't know what the consequences are, but one would recover from that. That would be a post-traumatic stress disorder. You would recover from it in a different, you're never the same, but you recover. But it's, well, to answer your question, it is quite common that people lash out at people who are safer, the safe people, because maybe this sister, the one who called us, she is solid, she's able to maintain herself in the world. So the sister who's spinning and has got dysregulated emotions, she knows that this person can absorb all my anger. So she's just going to throw it at her and throw it at her and throw it at her all the time.
Because there is a need to let it out.
Totally, totally. But the fact that she's still so angry, you know, I feel concerned around that, because she might be having other out-of-control behavior, like she might be using alcohol or drugs or sexuality or just road rage to be trying to soothe the brain that's been on fire now, that's been dysregulated. So trauma is really serious and difficult.
Well, can we also, you know, there is the flip side to when you experience the negative trauma to bring you also, make your relationship stronger or bring you together.
Absolutely. That absolutely can happen, like we heard with one of the couples over here, that if a couple goes through a trauma together, like an illness, and they find that there is a lot of mutual support that makes them increase their intimacy with each other. So that would be very beneficial to the relationship. Of course, it does happen like that. And one would hope that you'd be able to, like in infidelity, if a couple discovers that one of them has injured each other through infidelity, they work together, they try together to recover that trauma. But if you don't, if you deny it, you're not going to have, you know, great success.
We've got a caller on the line. Anonymous, good morning to you.
Morning, hi.
Thank you so much for your call. What is your question or your comment?
I wanted to ask Doctor that I'm 23 years old and I gave birth to a baby girl last year. And after that, I discovered that I have cervical cancer. So the thing is, me and my boyfriend, he actually doesn't want to talk about it. He feels sensitive about the topic so much that he ignored me when I talked to him. He would sometimes take the baby to the next room to play and all that. So how do I get him comfortable to talk about it? Because soon, I think about in a month, I'll be going in for treatment. So how do I get him to open up and to be free and talk about the situation?
Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And it can be so lonely for you, because I love that you want to talk about it, because talking about it is one way of really healing. He's gone into a state of denial. So what happens when one goes into trauma is that you go into 3 different places, 4 really. You're going to fight. Either you're going to fight with this person, or else you take flight, or else you freeze because you're so absolutely frozen, numbed out with emotions around the trauma around it, or else you faint, you literally faint. So it sounds as if your boyfriend has gone into flight. He's withdrawn, he's shut down, he's in denial around it. It's too difficult for him to talk about it, so he's shut his emotions down. And that's where it impacts on relationships, because now she's disconnected from him. So she feels alone and lonely, and that relationship is going to just get further and further apart. So I really, really would love for the 2 of you to go and talk to somebody together, so that he has a space to talk about his angry, difficult, sad feelings that he's got to be experiencing. Underneath trauma, there are 3 main emotions that we feel. It is anxiety, it's guilt, and it's fear. Huge fear. So you can hear with him, he's probably just terrified. And how he shows it is by shutting down. And he just deals with his terror inside. He's so afraid. So I really think, professional help would be very great for him.
All right. Dr. Eve, thank you so much.
Yes, and Anonymous, thank you for sharing your story with us. Our lines are open, 083-913-3728. We'll be back with the doctor for one last time.
My feel-good breakfast show.
All right, thank you very much, Graham. Yes, back with our relationship expert, Dr. Eve, for one final segment, and we'll still keep our lines open on 083-913-3728. I wanted to ask the question, Dr. Eve, what happens when the partner who's experiencing, I guess, the effects of the trauma from the other partner feels that the healing process is taking too long? Is it just something that you need to make peace with and allow to be healed by time, or is there something you can do to help?
The partner needs a lot of support, because all the focus and attention needs to be on the injured person. So the partner usually gets ignored around that, and I, as a clinician, really spend a lot of time giving empathy and support. And the partner needs to find places and people to support him or her during the time while the partner is getting over the trauma of some kind. And there's a feeling of helplessness. We were talking about it just now in the break, Kat, the sense of powerlessness and helplessness, and what can I do to get this person out of it? And it's like, okay, it's over now, so you should be done by now, you should be okay. Actually, no, because what we also know about PTSD is that it is something called development. It's a developmental disorder. So even though the initial trauma is over, it develops differently as one gets older. So there's always a residual of trauma that sits with people, and it can be very hard in a partnership. So the whole idea is to keep talking and to say, I feel like I've lost you, I'm disconnected from you, talk to me, I feel powerless, I feel helpless as your partner, what do you need from me? There has to be ongoing communication. Very hard on the partner.
Well, Dr. Eve, we have another caller on the line, Elizabeth from Cape Town. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Zoe. Good morning, Dr. Eve.
Hi.
What's your comment or question for Dr. Eve?
My comment is, early in my marriage, I've lost 2 babies, both at 5 months. And then me and my husband, we just found that talking to one another, saying we love each other, helped us through everything. It took a long time, years, but now we've been married 17 years, and we've been through it, and we got along with it, yes.
Wow, that's incredible. Thank you
for
so
sharing
much.
that,
Thank you for
Elizabeth.
sharing that. The sense of intimacy and connection was what kept you going, because that's the incredible trauma of losing children. It is the #1 trauma on your list of what traumas would be. Second on the list of traumas, by the way, is moving house or moving country or moving city. It's very disruptive to people's lives, but those ease with time.
Yeah, and so just simply talking to each other and almost carrying each other through the pain is what helps to keep the relationship strong at the end of the day.
You have to practice what's called self-compassion, really be with yourself in suffering, and have a lot of empathy for your partner. That really can be very healing.
Dr. Eve, when a couple experiences the same trauma, but they both handle it differently, how can that also impact the relationship? Let's say one can cope with it and the other one can't.
Yeah, so if they find that there is this divergence and the one keeps being stuck, as it's called, and the other one has been able to be more, become more regulated and find that they're able to move forward with the trauma, because you never let the trauma go, it can lead to very, very great divide between a couple. And then if they become so disconnected, that's when you are very vulnerable to infidelity, to acting out behavior, and to the relationship breaking down. It's a very critical time. it is something which I call intimacy trauma, because people's intimacy is so badly impacted by trauma. And I really would advise all of our viewers, if you have had any kind of trauma, please seek professional counselling, because it impacts on your desire to be sexual, your desire to be intimate with somebody. All you want to do is shut yourself up and close down, and you've got this other partner. If they didn't get directly traumatized with you, they feel so excluded and really don't know what to do. So please get professional help.
And so whether the couple has experiences trauma together or not, it's just the one partner, and it becomes that kind of situation. What's the best way of going to seek help?
Yeah, I just want to say, because this is really important what you just said, Kat, a couple, for example, can be in a car accident together, right? And both of them can experience a car accident absolutely, completely differently. So the one can become frozen and stay frozen for years, and the other one just can absorb that trauma and move on with their lives. That couple also find enormous discordance and difficulty in finding a relationship together, because there's judgment and shaming around each other. The best way is to go into therapy as a couple. Really, I suggest that. We've got trauma centres all over our country which deal with this kind of thing all the time, to help people to reconnect with themselves and to reconnect with partners.
Wow.
Well, Dr. Eve, thank you so much for this morning, and it just shows that trauma can affect everyone, whether it's, just you in your relationship or both together in the relationship, but to stay strong and keep working at it, keep communicating. Thank you so much for that today.
And of course, taking time on your birthday to come and chat to us, Dr. Eve. Happy birthday to you. Let's find out what's coming up.